Hi, everyone. My name is Bryan Seely. Thank you for coming to this live event slash webinar. We are going to be doing a discussion, kind of an informal discussion of cyber risks and ChatGPT. I wanted to introduce the two panelists that we have here in-house. We have Abhi. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hey, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abhi Thorat. I'm the founder and CEO of SAC. First off, I want to thank everybody in person over here and people online. Thanks for your time. So a little bit background on this event or this topic and conversation is, so we've been getting a lot of requests, queries, concerns from our customers, especially in this campus, in the Bellevue Technology Center, BTC, about AI and ChatGPT, just around hallway conversations and the chit chats, and we said, okay, how about you just sort of put up a small informal event and talk about it, have some specialists, not so specialists, but everybody give an opportunity for people to chime in. So we're here on the second floor. We do have a small cyber lab where we've been replicating issues caused by AI-centric applications or ChatGPT. One of the recent use cases was we were able to generate ransomware code from GPT and test it in our cyber lab, and it worked. So yeah, that's so we're here playing around and fiddling around and experimenting with the, what the effects are, and then definitely, right, so sit down and figure out how could we mitigate these not so wanted effects of AI. So yeah, and I want to thank Bryan for being the host.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Bryan.
My pleasure. Am I right, Balaji?
Yeah, my name is Balaji Shamkumar. I'm the CTO of Nonam. What we do at Nonam is try to understand language and provide the right signals to wealth managers so they can make better investment decisions. I've been in this space, text mining, data mining, for almost 2.5 decades. I've seen, when 1 gigabyte was considered a large amount of data. So things are very different now, and the launch of ChatGPT actually motivated me to start this company and see how we can exploit, because things are very different now than they were even 5-6 years ago, where it was very hard for us expensive to try to understand language and extract signals. Now almost everyone can do it. So that's why we had to really come together quickly and try to launch this company. I want to thank Bryan and Abhi as well for inviting me to this panel.
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing your expertise. Sounds like you're actually using this type of technology on a day-to-day basis. So I was going through just tons of different prompts and figuring out, everyone remember when machine learning kind of became a thing? And so we've got an algorithm that uses machine learning, and it probably doesn't. It just became that buzzword, but now we're all rushing to adopt ChatGPT, and we're seeing companies starting to raise the alarms. Or there's a Google head I was watching on a podcast talking about why he left X and goes, this is a problem. We shouldn't have connected this to the internet. Like, is it the guy going, the Titanic isn't safe? And then everyone's like, full steam ahead, let's go race icebergs. What are your thoughts on, is he overreacting?
I think, there's a lot of hype right now, and people haven't really seen. Most of these things, they go through this cycle up, and for a while they really get excited. And then after 6 months, the reality starts sinking in. It's been more than 6 months since all this was launched. I think we had to wait for a few more months before people start seeing the reality. I have some really interesting stories about Bard and ChatGPT that I hope I get a chance to share with you at some point.
Have you seen what he's talking about, or what the Google head was talking about? Is there a danger that we're not addressing, or that we're more concerned with? Let's say companies are adopting it because other companies already have, and it's a race to the market, and people are full steam ahead who aren't qualified. The reason we don't see, let's say, Microsoft getting hacked as much as a startup is they've got a better resource team, they've got better security controls. So they're not on the front page of the newspaper because they've done their work. And a small company goes, we need to just race and put out a minimum viable product, and then what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So, yeah, so the general observation, right, is there's definitely opportunities for deploying AI for like productivity gains, just general efficiency, effectivity, efficacy, and yeah, and get good business outcomes, maybe cost savings on resources of any type. And those definitely are very attractive options, right? And drivers. But in terms of how to leverage the tool, which seems quite in its infancy, maybe not, but at architectural level, it seems like it's all built, and it's in a way even like self-mutating and growing. And yeah, I definitely feel there's a need to educate people around how to deploy it, especially people who are just deploying and using it, to achieve the benefits that they want. But they need to be educated in terms of how could they safely use it, and not just not use it, right? And have it like do it more incrementally in a more educated fashion.
I guess who would be in charge of something like that? Do we need to regulate AI development or its use?
Yeah, so it's different levels, different layers, right?
The libertarians are freaking out right now. I mean, it's a good question, really, because you're seeing companies having to like block it from being used because people are submitting corporate data to these data models, and it's a nightmare. Like, how many of you guys have restrictions or policies about ChatGPT at work? Have you already seen things happen that way?
Well, Eddie's nodding his head, yeah.
You have restrictions in this country? I'm surprised.
Yeah, so it's at
so many good
different
jokes.
levels, right? It's
Okay.
just, if you follow like the generic, like technology. There's a technology, right? In its infancy, and then you have your standards and development organizations, right? Which spec out, right? Spec out and put the parameters, so it can be interoperable, and such in typical use cases, right? So when you have like a new technology come up, and then there's vendors who want to code it, right? And so the SDO people say, okay, this is how component A is going to talk to component B, and now you go code. And so now those people are sort of, in a way, I don't know if we can call them responsible or not, to figure out like guardrails and parameters for this new technology, right? So NIST, right? So the NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, right? The people who come up with specifications to make sure that the technology is safe and interoperable and such. So the NIST, right, the NIST 800 series,
Right.
For the GRC. So they have now come up with high-level risk management framework around AI.
Oh, very
And it has they have got guidelines around manage, map, measure, and such. But again, it's high level, and so there's still a gap of taking that and making it more usable. And yeah, but that's again at a super high level of SDO. And then at the other end of the spectrum is whoever is using it, right? The literal user who's using it. Then if that person is an employee of a company or an organization, then I think it's at an organizational level that they need to figure things out at their level.
So everyone gets to kind of define whether it's okay for our company and it's not okay. Do you allow people at your company to use ChatGPT or OpenAI?
I would allow everyone free access to ChatGPT and Bard because, look, every technology has had its doubters when it was first launched, right? And if you don't allow people, then who's going to decide what the regulation should be? You're really going to trust our representatives to talk about AI and what type of regulations to put in place? there are laws in this country to prevent us already. There are existing laws to prevent us from doing bad things. I think those are sufficient, but you have to enforce those laws without any, I would say, restrictions. But if you try to regulate it, it's a dangerous game that we play. What could be done and what should not be done. For most of the people like myself who use ChatGPT and Bard as well, it's obvious what they can do and what they cannot do, and we are good at deciding how to use it. Now, there's a whole set of people who may not be as smart in how to use it, so don't use it. I've seen teachers who have struggled with using Office 365 on the web. They're very good at using desktop applications. When they had to transition to the web, they struggle. And these are teachers teaching in the universities, right? So we can't dictate that just because of that. You can't just say, oh, all the applications on the professor's desktop have to be desktop applications just because they're struggling to use it. I think, and this goes back to my fundamental question, who is the guy who can make these regulations? I don't think we have any authority whom we can trust to make the right regulations. As we go forward, we'll learn things, and for instance, people trying to impersonate senators from Washington to do certain things, or impersonating them and doing bad things. And there are laws against doing that. But if you catch somebody doing that, the punishment should be severe and immediate, and it'll stop that immediately. But if you try to regulate the use of what was that thing called, the ChatGPT version for image generation, it's going to be very hard. And people already know that it's not perfect. And there's some really smart guys, artists, who can tell you whether the art was produced by AI or it was produced by a human. And so people can see the difference. But these tools, there's one example, I don't know the application that Adobe launched, I think it was Firefly or something, mm-hmm. right? So I tried to generate an image from memory. I'd seen this painting a long time ago, and I have not been able to locate it. And I tried to give all kinds of descriptions to this application based on ChatGPT, Open AI. And it never got it right. I kept saying that the sun is on the right, so the shadow should be falling on the left, but it kept showing the shadows on the right. And I said, oh, the person was not sitting on the camel, the person was walking by the camel, but it could never produce an image that showed the person walking by the camel. It's always put the person on top of the camel. So it never gets it right? Because
you should check out Midjourney with umbrellas. The handle goes right through the person's head, or like through their arm, or it's built into their arm. Like, it doesn't quite get it.
Yeah. So I think there are limitations, and it's the wrong thing to say, stop this until some guy can figure out what the regulation should be.
No, I tend to agree. There's so many thousands of questions that kind of come up with it. One statement that I heard that I kind of tend to agree with is, it's not going to replace people, but people with AI are going to replace people without it.
That's right. Yeah.
However, on the flip side of that equation, people are seeing their workflows double, and then they're firing coworkers. So now it's almost like we're outsourcing, the way that they outsource manufacturing to other countries with lower cost of living, we're now doing the same thing where, this person can produce double what they normally could, and that person can't. Get rid of him, and ChatGPT to augment. Are there any ethical concerns there that people should be, or is it just the marketplace rules?
Well, yeah, that's a dangerous territory, right? Trying to say everything should be governed by the marketplace regulations. So at the end of the day, some guys like Summers was predicting that there will be another revolution in this country in the next 7 years. So there's this aspect of...
If anyone's saying that it's coming, they sell guns. Like, they're selling something that's like meal prep stuff, survival gear. Like, they're hoping for the end of the world, because I know people like this who were in the military with me, and they went off on some tangent. And even John McAfee a few times was just obsessed with this, because he doesn't want to play in this world here, because it's just difficult. He wants it to just like level the playing field, and everyone start over.
That's right. Yeah.
And let the strong fend for themselves. It's like, but if it's 20 more years, you're going to be old, man. This is not a very forgiving
Right.
environment.
Right.
But yeah, just be wary of that. Anybody who's pushing for a timeline, they might try to make sure it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like shaking the thing, right? You have a glass full of, some sand and things that come you shake it up and some things will float to the top and some things will settle to the bottom. Same thing, AI, in fact, before AI, we had another one, internet, right? I don't know if any of you remember 2000, 2001, 2002. It shook up a lot of the industries. I mean, look, Amazon, Barnes and Noble was gone. What was the other one? Blockbuster. So you're always going to have events like this that will shake up the industry, and some people are going to feel unhappy. And at the same time, I do believe, and this is where my liberal leanings come to the fore, where I would say, I do believe that there's certain people obviously need some help, right? When the industry gets shaken up like this, so that you have to support the people who lose their income somehow, to retrain them. Of course, there'll always be people who will exploit the situation. You provide some funds for retraining, there'll be somebody who will figure out how to exploit the system and abuse that. And that's the whole point of our regulations that we already have can stop that. And for instance, when you had the pandemic, I heard 90% of the funds were never returned. Right? The funds that the government gave out, 90% of them didn't go to the right people and they were never returned. So,
for anyone curious about that, if you went and looked up senators and congressmen from either side of the aisle, find out which ones had personal loans for the pandemic and then had it all forgiven, it'll shock you. But I'm not going to pick on one side or the other, but it's obnoxious. And that's the stuff that can be used to be found. Like, people can use AI to go and start becoming more powerful as an individual versus a company being able to sort of suppress information or other things. There are a lot of good things that could come out of this, but people need to ask the right questions.
That's right, you have to ask the right questions.
What are the right questions that companies should be asking? What are the things that we're not?
I'll give you an example. So I mentor some students, and usually students from, I would say, disadvantaged backgrounds. One of them happens to be an Afghani woman, and she was trying to come to this country as a PhD student. When you apply to colleges for graduate programs, you have to write a statement of purpose, basically describing what is your background, what kind of hardships you faced, and how you overcame them, and all this standard stuff that you have to submit an application to the college. And she sent it to me, asking me to review it, and it looked exceedingly good. And I was surprised, and I said, "Did you really write this? This is really good," because her English wasn't really that good. And because I talked to her, right? I talked to her and I said, "This doesn't really sound like you." And then she had confessed that she had used online tools like ChatGPT and Bard to rewrite the thing for her. So the point of the story is that, look, since I'd known her, I talked to her and I know her, I know what she's capable of and what she's not capable of. I know what her real talent is. And so if the university accepts application, this has been going on long before ChatGPT and Bard, where you pay somebody $2,500 to write your essays for you. So things haven't changed that much. The rich were able to do it. Now every guy can do it now. It's much cheaper to do the same thing. So if you talk to the person, you can detect these things and evaluate the candidates appropriately. Fine, use ChatGPT. In fact, the fact that you're using ChatGPT and Bard shows me that you're able to use the best tools out there to give your best presentation of yourself.
Any thoughts? That's fascinating.
No, I completely resonate, right? It's just the tool, right? It's like a super powerful tool. And now what do we do with it, right? It's just like a surgeon. What does a surgeon use a scalpel for? Whereas, somebody else on the opposite spectrum.
I could take a guess.
Yeah, so it's...
Yeah. I personally have had I got to go to small claims court where you're not allowed to have a lawyer for some frivolous lawsuit. So I researched a little bit, but there's a whole bunch of words in the legal system that you just don't ever use. I'll give $5 to anyone who can tell me what intransigence means. No? But I heard it in court every single week for like 6 weeks. And it's a stubborn resistance to change and holding on to an extreme position. And it's used in a way to say, okay, I'm charging you with intransigence and fining you. It's like, I said this as a judge, you're disagreeing. I learned a new word. And ChatGPT helped me write a small claims court brief that then the judge in the case was like, well, I need some time to review all the facts and all the submissions, and a month later, word for word, cited what I wrote. Using, because I had to modify it, like you have to give it use case and context, but like if you can read a little bit of English, you can, this is, all right, just Google this word, but I didn't have time to go to law school. Definitely not. Barely have time to get here. So have you had any productive uses of ChatGPT in your own day-to-day? Writing blog posts, copy?
So, funny example is if you see that banner back there,
Perfect.
and sorry, Stephen. See, the security is simplified, risk minified. So we put an Ask ChatGPT for a good slogan, and it gave security simplified, and the other half was something else. So 50% is ChatGPT, 50% is human creative.
What you're saying is we've made ChatGPT into a marketing bro?
Yeah.
Wonderful. we could be using it to cure cancer, and it's writing jingles.
Right.
That's just the start, or one possible use case. Yeah, that was just.
No, but that's perfect. Because we're going to see people who are not taking, or who want to take credit for work that they did that was augmented. Sure, we all had to start somewhere. No one here invented how to tie their shoes. We all had to learn that from somewhere, so we can't I learned before you. Well, someone still had to teach you. You didn't figure it out. You weren't on an island with shoes, stumbling all over the place till you figured it out. So we'll all have this experience of, okay, yeah, I used this, and this is how I used it. Someone was explaining to me how they do a workflow for make a blog video. Let's say it's a minute or two long. You take the audio and you put it into a podcast. You put the audio video on YouTube. You take that transcription, put it through ChatGPT, add a couple words, format it. Now you have a blog post to then reference all the other things. And the workflow is so much faster. But no one's saying that you didn't come up with the content. It's just been tweaked a bit.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to see companies hiding the use of ChatGPT like they do? The same companies might hide vulnerabilities or pay off a hacker to not say that they hacked them, to hide it from the marketplace.
I don't know. I mean, I think the two are slightly different, right? One, if you're hiding, your insecurities, that's a different thing from preventing your staff from using the best tools they have out there to be more productive. For me, ChatGPT and Bard are more like productivity tools. Right? If before ChatGPT and Bard, we were using Microsoft Word and Google Docs or whatever to correct our spelling and grammar. Nobody really objected to that. They never blamed us for using those tools to correct our grammar. ChatGPT is just a little bit more, it's an order of magnitude better, but it's still the same productivity improvement. The idea is yours, the experience is yours, and then you use this to correct your language. What would be different is, for instance, if paintings, let's take the artwork, right? You use Firefly to generate a painting, you publish it and said you claim that was yours. That would be misrepresentation. On the other hand, if you said, I generated this using ChatGPT or OpenAI, and you openly admitted to that, and it still looked good, I think that would be great. But if you said that's something you did it yourself, I think that would be a misrepresentation. Same thing with writing articles or blog posts. You can't produce a blog post that's interesting if you're just borrowing an existing idea and asking ChatGPT to rewrite it for you.
Most blog posts aren't interesting, so. I mean, I get 100 newsletters into my spam box that I had to sign up for to get it. How many people read a newsletter? Like every so often, maybe if it's about something relevant, but I've
something relevant, yes.
I love my kids and I have newsletters about childhood development, but I'm not always reading the newsletters. It's usually more of a reactive, like, all right, the kid's on fire, what do I do? Like, it's never, who's got all this leisure time to just sit and read all these long pieces of content? But what you said earlier before off air was summarizing large blocks of text using AI.
Right.
That seems to be, to me, one of the, I've used it a couple times to summarize books,
Right.
and it does a really good job.
That's a good job. I sometimes ask you to explain legal documents. Who wants to read this legalese? And
No.
so I say, okay, tell me what is he saying. You capture this essence of it, and then you can spend time. If it's something that catches your attention that you don't like, then you spend time going through the legalese. That's what I do. If I get a legal document to sign, I first submit it and say, what's the essence of this document?
Something to try. Has anyone seen terms and conditions that had Easter eggs hidden throughout them? There was one company that offered $1,000 gift card if you found the thing and emailed the specific email address with the subject line or whatever. I wonder if it could summarize and be like, hey, can you read all these terms and conditions and find anything that's non-standard? And yeah, okay, there's $1,000 prize if you email that dude.
Yeah.
Like that's useful because
Right.
now you're no longer having to pay an attorney to sit and read through
Yeah.
documents. Wow, that's boring. Like, it sounds
Yeah.
like the worst job ever. That's why
Yeah.
they have to pay $500 an hour. I wonder if that works.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is, so is using AI or ChatGPT, would it be considered as a stigma, or
Well, I know like taking ADHD medication can have a stigma. It's a performance enhancer to some people. To other people, it's necessary, like insulin. I personally have ADHD medication, so I know from that, and I don't care what other people think, which is why I'll say it on camera. But prior to that sort of realization, I definitely felt people trying to invite me to feel a certain way about that, like, oh, it's not fair that you have to take meds. Like, you wouldn't say that to a diabetic who has to take insulin or somebody who has to take medication to stabilize blood pressure. So it's available to everybody. I think some people will, there's always going to be purists.
There are
aren't
always,
there?
yeah, there are always going to be people who would, if you look at the history of, for instance, document processing, right? First, I don't know how many of you guys have heard of LaTeX. Okay, so if people like us who came from the university using LaTeX, we look down on those guys who are using WYSIWYG tools like Word. And it doesn't seem like it's meant for guys who are really not as sophisticated as us to use these WYSIWYG tools to produce documents. So from our perspective, we did have some kind of a negative stigma associated with, there's a stigma associated with people who are using Word. 5 years later, we realized that it was the other way around. These guys who are using LaTeX, the old geezers, can't use modern tools. They're very slow in productivity. So now people who use Word and things like that are considered better. than
Anyone
those-
younger than me doesn't know what WYSIWYG means.
WYSIWYG means what you see is what you get. So these are all good tools, and now I completely transitioned to this Microsoft Word, and then when I started using Google Docs, I found that it was much better at correcting grammar and allowing people to do multiple things at the same time. I tend to look down on the guys who use Microsoft Word for their document processing. So I think this will always be there, right? This will always be there. There will always be some guy who will look down upon you because he thinks he's better. That's just human nature. And you can't regulate it or dictate one thing is better than the other and let the marketplace decide who is more productive and who's making more money out of it.
yeah? So the whole, so the generative aspect, right, of especially now the generative aspect which generates content, it's now always going to be like questionable in terms of, okay, where did it come from, right? And so I think it's doing an awesome job in terms of taking care of communications. People like me have like very poor communication skills, so it helps. Now people know if an email coming from me versus email now versus 2 years from now. So I think it's solving the problem of effective communications, right? And then it's breaking it down into, okay, communications is one thing, right? But what are you trying to communicate, and would you be sort of be able to deliver on what you communicated? Right? Yeah, because now, right, this every communication is really, first class. Like, it's really good. But okay, now you've communicated this. Now, are you going to deliver the goods or the services, by any of the faculty in your body, upper half of the body, preferably? Sorry, brain. That's what I meant. So, yeah. So that's.
You're good, man.
Yeah, this is all because of your company, Bryan.
I tend to have that effect on people. I don't take things too seriously, and I'm just lucky to be here.
Yeah, so I think that's what it is. And again, right, so, and again, the other part, as you said, Balaji, is if you can use AI and really do awesome things, then I think you'll really be, looked upon like this. That's, okay, you took a tool and you really made changes at a order of magnitude level. So that's.
Yeah, it definitely has. It's definitely enhanced productivity for me, and even if it didn't create so much more output, it definitely gives momentum and motivation to be having to think past writer's block, or I have no idea what I'm going to do here. All right, what ChatGPT? What do you think? How should I do this presentation? Here's 47 slides that we'd like you to. Wow! All right, narrow that down. All right, that's better. But I did notice there was. I like to learn other languages. So I like to travel. I was in Luxembourg, and I've never studied French, and I'm like, oh crap, I learned some French. Everyone speaks English, thankfully, so there's that safety net. But being able to go up to somebody and when you finally get the pronunciation close enough, like bonjour, and you say it right, just maybe correct enough where they then respond, and you're like, crap, I don't know how to deal with all that new information.
Yes,
you just said.
as long as you're in the same context, right? It's taking the language barrier away, or the communications barrier away, and just putting you right in the context. And you.
What I'm looking forward to is a holodeck, where you've got where you can practice. And you could, for people with social anxiety, for people with language who want to learn other languages and practice with a human or human person, they'll never get sick of answering questions. They're never going to get annoyed at you. They're going to give you good responses, and maybe they'll have a sense of humor function that you can turn up or down. But, it'll be a better parent than I'll ever be, because 47 is about my limit of questions that my son can ask me in a row before it's like, all right, dude, go find something else to do. I love you, but not 48 questions. Love you.
Yeah. So, so if we sort of maneuver a little bit towards the ramifications, right, of the tech. So for example, right, for all the lonely folks out there, right, so there's a virtual friend, right, the chat, and there's a very popular product called Xiaowise. Okay. It's I think it's popular in the large Asian countries, and so it's a virtual friend, so. That's crazy. The problem with loneliness, you go and start a conversation. Right?
In the country that has the most people are not the resource that they need. They have virtual people. They just matchmake would just make more sense. You're now his friend. It would make more sense. When people are scarce and there aren't chat rooms or I get the idea of a virtual friend, but yeah.
It also means that there are more introverts in India.
A hand-holding process to be like, all right, now you're ready for a real person.
Yeah, so where I was headed with that, right? So there was an incident where, so now this AI, this chatbot AI, has a lot of, insights into, a person's personal life, what he went through, since he woke up in the morning and he went to sleep. And so that AI company was hacked.
Of course it was.
And yeah, and they got access to all this information. So do you use that?
I don't even know how to spell it.
Okay, all right.
I think it's a Chinese AI.
Yeah, Xiaowise. Yeah, so it's about it's being careful about opening up with how much you share your. And yeah, so the privacy, right? So this sort of puts us the privacy concern, and of course, in the first place, right? You divulged, so much of details, so it's
So I guess
sharing of responsibility.
the same sort of privacy concerns exist in the same, like, don't share stuff anywhere, especially there. And if you're, the hype thing tends to get people, getting people excited about something new. It feels a lot like the phone calls I get from friends who are like, my parents just won the lottery in London and they wired money to a courier. How do I get it back? Ooh, yeah. Sorry about that. That sucks. But they got super excited that they won the lottery in a country they've never been to, and then wired money to a guy so he could bring them the money. But he has money over there. This isn't the same thing as the chicken and the fox and the grain and the boat. He can't. He's got the money. He can just bring you more, not send him some. But it's too good to be true. It's a new thing. They've never really understood. They don't get. The common sense doesn't seem to apply. But you couldn't scam them in the real world easily. But on the internet, they're just hopeless.
Yeah.
So the privacy concerns. If you're not going to tell someone what you're telling AI, maybe don't. But would you want all your medical records just available out in the open, or therapy notes, so that's going to be a concern when you have a virtual friend that you tell all your secrets to. That sounds like a government plot to
But
just,
look,
let's find out all the secrets of our people.
There are already regulations that govern these companies that get our data online. If they violate it, punish them severely so that they don't play the numbers game, right?
Yeah, because it's about checking a checkbox, like clicking on a checkbox. So it's just it's so useful, right? So especially the EULA, EULA, it's like maybe 16, 17 page document, and after you buy a software, right? So you're eager to start using it because you start using it.
So I mean, this is where I think the law has to be a little more, I would say, stringent. Just because
you seem
I
to think they
signed
care more about users than they do companies in this country. If a company does the most egregious things in the world, nothing happens.
Nothing happens. I think that's where I think we need to be a little more strict with the companies. We break the law. Even though I might have signed this 10-page document without reading the fine print that says I give my rights to my personal data to you, that should not be allowed. Right? Taking my personal data and then selling it or even publishing it somewhere else, that's inherently, common sense would tell you that's a bad thing to do. And if the law is, there should be no two ways about this, where they take your data without your express permission. And if you, granted, yeah, you gave them permission by signing a 10-page document. Somewhere in there, in the fine print, was said in the statement that says, yes, I can do whatever I want with this, with your data, and that should not be allowed.
Yeah, so good example. Sorry, Fran.
Oh, no,
so recently, right? So Clearview AI is so the scrape, right? Scraping is a thing. So scrape like $30 billion images from social, social sites, and they used it, right? And there's nothing, that can be done about. There's, going forward.
Well, companies are now starting to sue OpenAI for training their language models on their books.
That's right. Yeah.
There's authors who have been like, all right, please summarize Sarah Silverman's this. And it summarizes the whole book, which means that's a copyrighted and trademarked.
That's right. Yeah, that's the
intellectual property that was stolen to train the AI. Because if it can recall the book word for word, sorry, it read it.
Yeah,
it didn't surmise it. So we might not see OpenAI for very long if they go through this process. But then where do we get that? How do we duplicate it without stealing?
Yeah, then this goes back to, okay, so anything that's been digitized, right? Anything that has any asset, quote unquote asset that has a digital format, it's sort of, now susceptible to, especially content-based, right? Content-based, especially the way AI works, or ChatGPT works, it's just like word by word, right? And it'll refine it once it gets the context. But you tell it the first word, it knows the second word. And then the third word, it knows what the fourth word is. and that's how even English languages. So one option is adopt a different language which doesn't have a certain set of semantics or syntax around your nouns, words, pronouns. Just adopt a new language. Just start speaking a different language. That's one of the solutions. But
Yeah, like Japanese is backwards compared to English. The verb and noun structure is completely flipped, which is why it makes real-time translation just bonkers to me. To like listen to somebody translating in real time, meaning they have to wait for the end of the sentence before they can put it together and then still keep up on new information.
Yeah.
Humans can do that. My aunt is a professional translator in Japan, or was for a long time with Morgan Stanley, and like I don't know how they ever did that. It's just crazy to me.
It's a game of like semantics and the syntax, right? And you get the context correct, and then you have like all the billion people, whoever is using it throughout the planet, and they're just adding inputs and parameters to the whole neural network, and it's getting refined.
If we didn't have intellectual property stolen, where are we going to get that data to train AI models? It has to either be licensed or not used.
Yeah, so one option is, we can anonymize it in terms of to train the data somehow, right? Remove the labeling from it, or this, yeah.
You have to crowdsource it.
Yeah, or in a way abstract it from finding out the source. Right? So this way you're training the model
that
with the
doesn't
data.
make it legal, any more legal.
No,
just
that
because
means
I
you
say,
didn't get
I
caught.
take his document, his
You're removing attribution.
yeah,
but
you're just
not
removing the attribution.
the
You're
fact
not-
that content in that order is mine.
Yeah,
Same with saying like a recipe is copyright protected or it's intellectual property and it's a trade secret for how to make this type of cookie for this brand. And if someone else has it, it's over.
Yeah.
So how do we
Well,
not steal, how do we not get caught? Those are two fundamentally different questions. So
I
it's not
Still, but
supposed to have
still
an
be
answer.
able to train,
Well, yeah.
the-
You
well,
wanna
that's the
make-
fundamental problem here, right? You have your training, this whole ChatGPT and everything is based on recognizing patterns in published text. So you remove the book has written from the training set, and I miss those patterns, I'll never be able to address
You
any
have to
knowledge in
You
that
have to be
space.
what, like 70 years prior to now for copyright, unless it's
Yeah,
been extended like
right,
Disney. So
right.
we're going to be stuck in like the 1800s
That's
where
right.
published stuff.
And I think the people who are providing this information have
It's
to
gonna
be
be problematic.
cognizant of where they're violating the copyright law and not quote verbatim things from the text. So that, like the example that you gave, where if you're summarizing somebody's novel and you basically removed one person from as a potential customer, right? And that's a bad thing. The companies like Google and OpenAI and Microsoft, they should all be aware of this obligation not to divulge too much information, just provide enough of a teaser so that they'll go and buy the book rather than get the whole story from you. I mean, this is, news has been doing this, online news has been doing this for 20 years, right? They just provide a link. Want to read it? Pay for it. You don't want to read it? That's fine. We've given you a headline. And they see that all the time. And most news outlets, most content providers are okay with that because, like Wall Street Journal, it's an opportunity for them to expand their audience, their potential customer base. So I think this is where I think the laws are clear. We need to enforce that. Microsoft, Google, Facebook, or whoever is providing these tools need to be held liable for publishing information that they're not allowed to.
That could actually be a really interesting way to find out if you've got prejudice or not, where it's like, I'm trying to paint my bedroom. Is white a better color than brown? And then it goes, would you like to read Mein Kampf? Oh no! Like it starts to try to anticipate what your needs are, and that's definitely not what I said. But if it's saying, okay, let's say the one subject in a book like Sarah Silverman's, I've never read it, I don't know what it's about. I'm assuming it's funny. I'm assuming it's got some Jewish tendencies because she's Jewish. But it might have something about a subject that no other place has. So either you don't get that information as a person looking at an AI model, or you do, and then it has to have attribution.
That's right.
if it's going to provide, it can't obviously provide the whole text without saying, hey, you have to pay a fee.
Yeah.
And then, but there's no way we're going to get every artist, author, writer, textbook author, everyone to agree what a fair
I think you will
licensing model
never,
is.
right? I mean, that's why you have these lawsuits with against Google and other companies which try to publish this online news. I think you'll
Use
never
it while
have-
you can.
right? Because you can. That's true too. I think, I mean, this you have to let the marketplace decide, but the copyrights laws are clear. You just enforce them and say you can't just publish Sarah Silverman's book or even summarize it and publish it unless you got permission from her. And Google or OpenAI needs to make a deal with Sarah Silverman saying we're using, and in fact, it's a good case where you have a very large number of content providers, each providing a little bit of content, and they basically
Training, if you have to sit with an AI to supervise it, especially in 911. So if a call comes in and AI is sitting there handling the call and doing a fantastic job, but every so often it has a hiccup and a human needs to get intervene. That's like a person.
it'll be a lot less stressful, right?
It'd be a human like supervising an auto plant, like a car plant. But you're training someone to do your job. That's your replacement. You'd feel a lot better if you had retraining or a job waiting for you after that and there was less uncertainty, because there's nothing worse than that, like, oh, I'm going to get fired any minute and I don't know how I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to
think,
eat.
I mean, the PSAP operators probably disagree with that. That's one of the most stressful jobs you can imagine, right? They're fielding all kinds of 911
Yeah.
calls. I actually worked with PSAP operators for a while as part of the Motorola operations. They require a lot more training than you can imagine. They train for almost a year before they operate. They require a lot of psychological counseling. It's one of the most stressful jobs, and that's one area where they would welcome something like this, where AI is fielding most of the calls, and they only take the occasional call to assist the AI systems.
Yeah, that would be, there's definitely a use for that has, like, anyone can obviously tell, oh, yeah, I don't want to hear what's going to happen. Like, there's a house fire, there's a shooting, there's everything that you call 911 for is pretty much stuff that's going to ruin your day that you don't want to listen to.
Yeah, in general, the support staff is probably the most underappreciated, right? In fact, the companies always treat the support centers as a cost center. Everything else is more important than the cost center.
Welcome to cybersecurity. Like whenever we ever generating revenue, same thing. It's just a big cost.
It's just a big cost center, yeah.
Can we trim a little bit here?
Everybody likes to talk about security, but they don't want to pay for it, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Wonder, like, air traffic control might be another thing.
That's right,
it's
that's another
where
stressful
humans
thing.
have fatigue, and where fatigue is the biggest cause of human error that then results in people dying.
Yeah.
Anyone here have experience, what's been, have you played with ChatGPT or any AI stuff? Is what surprised by anything?
I'll just throw out, it's amazingly accessible from an open source. We think about big companies.
Yeah.
Meta, open sourcing their ChatGPT. 20 minutes, you can have it running on your local machine, doesn't need major horsepower, and you can do anything you want with it.
It's amazing that all of a sudden it's a thing, like, it's so good and it's free, like Gmail or whatever. It's almost like they need us more than we need them.
I work at a small company, and our documentation guy is somewhat unreliable.
Every documentation guy is unreliable.
Like,
Just
every
FYI.
page is working. So my coworker, every time that the documentation guy isn't available, he just plugs in what he wants into ChatGPT and puts it in the docs.
Yeah.
So I think we're up to about 12% of our documentation being written by
ChatGPT.
between my coworker and ChatGPT.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's probably like instruct GPT, right? It's and that's like instruction manuals, and it can, that yeah, that can be like
She has another thing to.
My name is Muna. I also work at a cybersecurity company, digital identity and access management. I use ChatGPT not for my work but for my personal life. I'm originally from Paraguay, South America. And when I was there, like 2 months ago, my good friend was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she didn't have a clue what to ask the doctors. And I researched everything, and now I learned a lot about that. I know the different types of cancer, the different grades of cancer, the different medication, and I gave her a list what to ask the doctor. But she went to the public health system, and thanks to that, because she had all the questions, and I told her what other exams she has to take, she got the treatment instead of 5 months in 1.5 months, and she
Wow.
had her first chemotherapy last Friday.
Wow.
And I even told her the side effects of the medication and the care she has to take, thanks to ChatGPT.
Wow.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a great
And
story.
yeah, and she is so thankful, but I thank ChatGPT for that. And in my personal life, I own a few Airbnbs, apartments, and all the description I do with ChatGPT, and I'm always on top. I just write a draft with my own words, and the other, I add humor, I add sarcasm in some parts, and it's like a great listing. And I add amazing pictures, and I'm almost always on top of
That's
the
great.
rankings. And I think ChatGPT is good.
So one thing I do want to point out, though, you have to be careful about using ChatGPT or Bard or any of these language models for facts. I'll give you an example. The other day I heard somebody mention, I don't know if you know of Tom Siebel. Tom Siebel is the guy who started C3.ai. Somebody said, oh, Tom Siebel was part of OpenAI, and I then asked Bard, oh, what does Tom Siebel have to do with OpenAI? And it told this fantastic story about Tom Siebel being one of the original investors in OpenAI. He was a chairman until 2021 or something, and then he unfortunately died in 2022. I was almost tempted to write to Tom Siebel saying, Tom, Bard just killed you. So Tom Siebel is alive and well. He had nothing to do with OpenAI. He started C3.ai. So there have been a couple of instances where both Bard and ChatGPT got terribly wrong, and I said, this doesn't make sense, ChatGPT. And then they go back and say, oh, yes, you're right. I got it wrong. So
Yeah, even
using
that involved.
factual information from ChatGPT and OpenAI, you have to be a little careful. Often you can go back to Google and check for the validity of the state facts. Usually they're very good in correcting language and improving the language. But if you ask for facts, you have to be a little careful about taking what they provide at face value.
Yeah.
I had it write a bio for me for a fake Wikipedia entry that I was just seeing what it would come up with, and it said he has a number of children. It didn't. It didn't give a number of how many children. It said he has children, a number in a bunch of different ways, different times, but it's like humans wouldn't put it in if you didn't know. Like, you have kids? Like, yeah, I have kids, great. He's a father, but it doesn't say he has
A number of children.
a guesstimated number.
No, yeah, I know.
A plethora of children.
For the apartment, it's in a super safe neighborhood. No, it's not.
Do you start with Spanish and then
No.
translate, or do you start with English and
I
then?
started with English, but I tell them, okay, this is the city, Asunción, Paraguay, and that is the neighborhood. It's safe, but it's not like super safe, but he exaggerates a little bit, right?
It's optimistic.
To
yeah.
make it like, wow, outstanding. But then I go back and edit, and then I remove all the stuff that are not like super correct, and then I paste it again, and I say to ChatGPT, write a final version. And then he writes a final version, and it's perfect.
I think this is one really good idea for, if anyone wants a tangible benefit from ChatGPT that you can see a result in, metrics regarding, like if you have LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn and look at how many views your profile has per week on average, and just, okay, it's 5 or 10 or 50 or whatever. You can go through your old jobs and use ChatGPT to write a better description.
Yeah.
And you use it to write job descriptions for your resume. If
Yeah.
you put it on LinkedIn, the word count going up, having better long tail keywords and better descriptions, and it's more elaborate, gives you a higher ranking, and you will show up in searches more, which then people will then potentially find you for either jobs or who knows what the thing is. But the profile views going up isn't a bad thing unless you're in the witness protection program. Possible other use
I
cases.
will do that experiment. I like to experiment with ChatGPT
It works.
all the time.
It works.
The other thing to remember is that, humans are extremely smart, and people worry about losing their jobs and all that.
He has a good
So-
sense of humor. You have a good sense of
No,
humor.
I actually believe this. And so there are a bunch of AI managed equity funds. None of them did as well as the human managed funds. So the best performing funds in the market are always the human
And how
managed.
did the monkey with the darts do?
That's true too, right?
He did better than they did.
No, on the average, they probably did. But there's some really good investors out there, right? You know some of those names. But generally, what I found was that the AI managed funds haven't done as well as the best managed human managed funds.
And if you were to invent an AI, like we were talking earlier about it, that does predictive analytics and could actually predict better than a best guess, you wouldn't tell anybody.
That's right. Yeah.
Because even if you wanted to donate it all to charity, this is a lesson I was trying to teach somebody about binary trading funds and all these sort of scams that are out there. And Bitcoin, it's like 12% returns a week. No, it's not. No, it's not real. Because if it was, mathematically, you could be a billionaire very, very, very quickly. They wouldn't be selling that information. They wouldn't be telling anybody. They'd own everything. And even if they were philanthropists, they could make more money than you doing other stuff badly than they could just donate all the money. So it's all, no, don't do it. We have time for one quick issue topic. Is there anything?
Yeah, so in terms of summarizing, right, so risk and compliance, right, so this is the governance, risk and compliance part, right, and governance is, it's a little tricky, especially for like small to medium-sized businesses, right? So risks, so the fact that they're adopting this tool, which is accessible to, Fortune 50 companies versus like a small to medium-sized company, but it comes with a lot of baggage in terms of a lot of risks, right, and known, unknown, and for them, they need to have certain way to, they need to be educated about the risks and the compliances depending on what type of industry they are in, and so they can go and look up, okay, NIST, AI risk management framework, which is quite abstract. It's good, useful, but it's high-level guidelines. it's difficult for them to translate it into something actionable, right? So, yeah, so that's my bit of a sales spiel here, is that's where we help the small and medium-sized businesses to.
Let's just hope it doesn't change in the next month.
Okay.
It seems to be evolving all the time, but there's cool stories that, positive, that's really cool about your friend.
Yeah.
Because it's rare we get to see that type of empowerment of people being able to use it for non-commercial things.
Yeah, and she was so lost, and it was like a shocking news, and at least she went with the paper and asked the doctor exactly what other test she needs, and so she saved a lot of time.
That's the most important
Yeah.
thing, is getting treatment one day to the next can
Yeah.
be really,
Yeah,
really bad.
Exactly, and the healthcare system is very slow there. So with one visit, she advanced very fast because of the questions that I told her to ask the doctor.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I think probably that's the best example I can think of where you use a combination of human
Yes, it was.
and ChatGPT.
It changed the whole treatment, and
Yeah.
I even told her what to eat and stuff like that according to ChatGPT. And of course, she went then to a
Talk to the doctor.
nutritionist and was basically the same thing. Because cancer likes different kind of food, and if you stop eating that, then you slower the process apparently.
Kids are like cancer. They like different kinds of food.
True.
Not your kids, my kids. That's what I'm talking about. No, but what that did was you had a goal in mind of understanding cancer, and you
Yeah.
used ChatGPT to summarize and give you the relevant information. It did so, and it accelerated her getting her treatment.
Exactly.
Unreal. Like that's the coolest thing I've seen ChatGPT do.
Exactly, because apparently there is the hormonal type, the HER2 type. We didn't even know that exists, but thanks to ChatGPT now I know a lot. See, I'm still learning because I'm curious and I'm asking questions to help her along
That's so
the
cool.
process. Yeah. And now I even know they are giving her a good treatment because she told me the names of the drugs. And
That's so cool.
I use that on ChatGPT as well.
I did not expect to have such a positive
Yeah, it was
use
so
case,
fun.
and I mean, there's so many questions we could talk for hours and hours. But I want to say thank you to everyone for showing up digitally or in real life, or people who are watching this later. What are you doing? You should be doing something else. No, this is, I could literally talk about this for all day, every day. I'm sure a lot of other people could. Give yourself an opportunity to do something good with this for yourself. Go have it run through your LinkedIn and tell me the results.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
hosting, Brian.
All right, it's time for barbecue now.
Are you based out of this building?
No.
No. Okay. But you work at home?
I